Now, we are finishing up a series. If you've been here at all the last couple of weeks, this is the last week of a series we're doing in the summertime called Grace at the Movies. Excuse me. Now, one of the things we've done, and Rick Woodhull will do it again today, is because we're at the movies and you probably smelled the popcorn coming in and saw the machine, we also want you to be able to enjoy this time. So if you would actually like some popcorn to eat during the service, just put your hand up, and our wonderful usher about movies, reading popcorn, is this really church? Yes, it is. Because we believe that we can have fun together as we talk about the truth of the Word of God. And we also believe that you can find truth in places sometimes maybe you're not even looking for it, like movies. A lot of times producers aren't trying to speak the truth of God, but they do it even on accident. So I believe we can find truth wherever we look for it if we're looking for God's truth. And one of the best mediums today is movies. Because we all love movies. Right? And we all see them. He's out of popcorn, he's bringing more in. Don't worry, if you want more, he's coming. Just keep putting your hand up and he'll make sure you are well fed. Alright? So we look at these stories as modern day parables. Jesus used stories in the Bible, so we're looking at the stories that we're telling each other today to find God's truth in them. So we're finishing up that series this week called Grace in the Movies. And I hope it's been fun for you, it's been fun for me, because I love movies. I love talking about this stuff, so hopefully you'll be able to find some truth in it. And I know I may not have covered your favorite movie, we only have a couple weeks, but we'll do this again and we'll try to take suggestions maybe, alright, as we go forward with this. But I do have a question as we move into this final week. How many of you guys have liked or have seen at least one Marvel movie up to this point? Okay, who loves Marvel movies? Anybody? I will tell you up front, I myself professed Marvel geek. Like, I geek out on the Marvel movies. I love the comic books I always have as a kid. Like, I've seen probably all. I think there's 19 of them they've made now in the last 10 years. I think I've seen all of them probably multiple times. My wife will tell you it drives her crazy because even when they're on TV and I've seen them a million times, we have to watch them. So she's like, you've seen this a million times. We own this. Why are we watching it? It's on TV. So, it's on. It's sucked into it. I love the Marvel movies. Now, odds are, if you're like me, you probably have a favorite character that's a Marvel superhero. So I just want to add just real quick, anybody who's a Spider-Man fan? Spider-Man your favorite? What's saying you? I'm with you, buddy. I love Spider-Man too. I love Spider-Man too. Iron Man? You an Iron Man guy? Dude, right? I mean, the guy's, it's a suit, but he's really smart, and it's just, it's Iron Man, right? So, you got it, right? Hulk. Anybody a Hulk man? He's like, oh, yeah, all right. It's like you picture yourself being able to do that. And you're like, that'd be great if I could just take out my aggression and then they make movies about me, right? Got the Hulk. I'm trying to think. Who else throw that out there that would be? Thor. Thank you, Thor. Thor, people have been wanting to wield a big hammer, have long golden hair. All right, cool, right? It's like, man, he's like the Swedish model superhero. We love those guys. Wonder Woman is not Marvel, she's DC. You should know this. You're married to me. All right? We've been through this. We've been through this. But Wonder Woman is good. Wonder Woman is good. Okay, we'll work. I told you, we're working on it. I'm working on passing on the novel. But that's true. That is true. Anybody else, any favorite Marvel superheroes you want to throw out there that I missed? Captain America, thank you. I can't believe I forgot Cap, right? He's actually my second favorite is Captain America. I just wish that I just had the courage to do the right thing all the time. And just that shield, and it's just cool, right? Like, you just want to be able to do that stuff like Captain America. Man, that'd be awesome to be that strong and that fast and, all those things. It'd be really cool. So these movies, these Marvel movies have struck a chord in our country. I mean, honestly. They would have made the billions of dollars. I think they're like 17 or 18 billion dollars at this point they've made. That's like what it means, billion. So they've struck a chord, and they've been making them since about the last 10 years. They made about 19 of these movies. Now, with that, I think there's a plan maybe 36 or so in the Marvel universe they're working on right now. So we have many more years of Marvel films to look forward to, which is a good thing. They're expanding the universe even more. But these characters have struck a chord. They've reached the community. They're one of the, it's almost like a guaranteed success when they make one of these movies at the box office, right? Because we all go and see it because we love these things. And one of the movies we're going to talk about today is one of those superhero movies that came out this year. It's a Marvel movie. It's one of my favorites that I've seen so far this year. And I've seen all 3 or 4 that have come out. This is one of my favorites. And the movie is Black Panther. Anybody seen Black Panther? You've seen this movie? Really? Okay, a few of you. All right. It's a good movie. If you have not seen it, it's a very good movie. Now, what's unique about Black Panther in a lot of ways is, number one, I think it's the 3rd highest grossing Marvel, or movie, not just Marvel movie in general that's ever been made. I mean, it was up to like 1.3, 1.4 billion by itself. It passed Titanic as far as making money. So sorry, Kate and Leo. It is now like three or four at the box office that's made money on. The other thing that's really unique is the first movie that has predominantly almost an entirely African or African American cast. There's very few people that are not African or African American in this movie, and it centers on a hero that is from Africa. That was a very unique thing for them to do, and to do well. It did really, really well in the theater because of the story that it told. And so Black Panther was a great story. If you haven't seen it, again, it's PG-13, so I'll leave it up to you to tell you make your rules on what you watch. I'm not.
4 more bags.
We got 4 more bags of popcorn. Sorry to interrupt. Anybody wants them, Rick will give them to you right now. If not, you can nudge later. We'll tell the whole thing to you. But so it did really, really well. It hit a lot of people love the story. It's a great story. But again, I'm not telling you have to go watch it. But if you like Marvel movies, it is a good movie in my opinion. If you don't know the story, I'll tell you a little bit about what Black Panther is all about. Black Panther is about a guy named T'Challa, which is the king of a fictional country in Africa called Wakanda. Now, Wakanda is not a real place, but in Marvel, it is. Now, Wakanda is a country that the history of it goes way, way back to the beginning of the world, in a sense. And there's something very unique about Wakanda. Wakanda is built on top of a very, very precious resource called vibranium. There was a meteor that struck the earth, full of vibranium. In Africa, they built Wakanda on top of this resource called vibranium. Now, when we talk about Captain America, his shield is made out of vibranium. So that's that metal that kind of shows up throughout Marvel movies, right? So Wakanda is built on top of the source of vibranium. And so you have this entire civilization that has grown up around that, made up of 5 different tribes that agreed to live there. 4 of them agreed to get along and be ruled by a king. The 5th one has not, and has gone off to live in the mountains. So you have this kind of kingdom that's been built there. Now what's unique about Wakanda is that nobody knows it's there. Like from the outside to the rest of the world, Wakanda looks like a typical third world African nation, where it's farmers and all of that stuff. Because with the vibranium, what it's allowed them to do is create this insanely advanced technology, to where they have more than, you can imagine. It's like the most advanced technological society you can imagine. And with that, they have created a force field that has gone around Wakanda. So from the outside, nobody can tell it's there. But on the inside, you have this entire civilization of people from Wakanda that have grown up with technology and resources and all these things that really could change the world. So you have the story about Black Panther, who is the king, but he's also the protector of Wakanda. And he has these superpowers, partially because the suit that he has is made out of vibranium, partially because of an herb that grows in Wakanda that gives him extra strength and all of those things. And so he's the king, but the king also becomes the Black Panther, which is the protector of Wakanda. And his job is to protect other people, protect the country from letting anyone else know that it's there. Because the fear is if somebody else found out it was there, they might misuse the resources, and they might take it for granted, and it could do damage all over the world because of how advanced technologically it is. And so you have the story of a king, a young guy taking over for his father, who was actually killed in one of the previous Marvel movies. You've seen Winter Soldier. And he's taking over and he's coming into his role as king of this country called Wakanda. And the question that he has to deal with right off the bat, and really this movie centers around, is not just the civilization of it, it's really about this one question. If you've seen it, if you haven't seen it, this is what the movie really centers around. If you had access to a resource that could change the world, a resource that was the answer to everybody's problems, that would change anybody who got a hold of it, if you had access to that, what would you do with it? That's really the underlying question of this movie, is when you have that kind of resource that could answer the needs of everybody, that would change the world, it's the answer to all the questions people have, it's the answer to all the needs in the world. If you had that, what would your responsibility be to do something with? What would you do with it? And you see in the movie there's 3 different views of what to do with it. Now the first view is what the kingdom had done for centuries, which is keep it to themselves and protect their own and make sure that they were in control of it. And so that's why they built the force field for no one to see it, and so they just kind of looked out for themselves. And that was the original view of the kingdom, and that was the pressure on T'Challa when he became king. Okay, you gotta protect us, right? Like, this is ours. Vibranium belongs to us. No one else needs to know about it because they might not be able to handle it. So the first option is you just keep it to yourself. But then you also see in the movie, there's other opinions. There's other opinions, especially from even T'Challa's best friend, where he says, listen, we have this advanced technology. We could use this to conquer the rest of the world. We can actually go out there and control people with this because we have this, and no one can stop us if we wanted to. So we don't have to hide anymore. We can actually use what we have and go out and take over. Kind of this militaristic, we're going to control the world with the resource that we have. So you have that option going on in the movie. And then you have the third option, which actually is promoted by T'Challa, the Black Panther's wannabe queen, like a woman he wants to marry and to be his queen. The view that she has of it is, listen, we need to share this resource. Like, we don't need to keep this to ourselves, and we don't need to control the people to go out there and become like a military coup on the world. We need to actually share what we have because we can help. And what we have, people need. People are dying because we're not helping. People are not getting what they need because we have it and we're not sharing it. So that's the view she's trying to push him into. In fact, after I want to show you a clip from the movie where they're having a conversation, and what you'll see is the King T'Challa talking to that woman, Nakia, about that very concept. Okay, what do we do with this? And you hear the different viewpoints in this clip. So we're going to play to show you. That's the conversation right there that we just talked about, right? Like, he's trying to be the king, and he just became king, and she's trying to point out, like, what are we going to do with this resource? We need to be helping those around us, not just keeping it for ourselves. And you see the tension in those two viewpoints. When you have a resource like this, what do you do with it? And this is not a new question that Marvel just invented. Okay, this is not a new problem that only happens in a Black Panther movie. This is a question that's been around for a really long time. In fact, even in the Bible, this is a question that was around when Jesus was walking the earth. Because as believers, we have such a resource in the truth of the gospel. We have that resource that can change the world. The resource that I truly believe is the answer to all the questions people are looking for. The resource that can meet the needs of everybody in the world around us. And the questions we have to ask ourselves are the same questions. What are we going to do with it? What are you going to do with that resource? Right? Because even back in Jesus' day, you had the same views. Right? Because you had the Jewish people, which Jesus was a part of, and they were under Roman rule. Okay, so you had people who had different views. You had these people who believed there was going to be a Messiah, which Jesus was, but didn't necessarily believe Jesus was the Messiah they were looking for, but they believed there was one coming. And so you had this group of people who said, listen, we know we have the answer to what people are looking for, but we don't want to share it, so we're just going to pull out of society, and we're going to live in caves and outside the cities and not share it with anybody and just wait until this Messiah shows up. And so you kind of have these secular, these groups that would just kind of seclude themselves from the rest of society, even back in Jesus' day. The Essenes were one of those groups that would just pull out. In fact, you've heard the Dead Sea Scrolls. You've heard those are the group that was known for, like, they were found in caves that group thought they would live in. So they would pull away from society and say, okay, we're just going to watch out for ourselves, keep ourselves safe, and wait until our Savior comes, and not really help anybody else, just do our own thing. Right? And then you had the people who were waiting for the Messiah to come, the Jewish Messiah they were waiting for, because they wanted him to take over. They thought when he showed up, he was going to set them free from Roman rule. He was going to start a coup, if you will. He's going to come in, he's going to ride in on a horse, he was going to lead a military advancement, set them free from Roman oppression, and they were going to use his abilities, all his strength, to rise back to where they thought they should be in control. They were tired of being ruled by the Romans, so they wanted to kind of have a leader, a Messiah that was going to come in and change all of that. And so you get these people called the Zealots, and they're all about, we will do whatever it takes to take over. We're going to use this resource, and we're going to use it to control and get back into power. But then you have Jesus, who shows up, he comes on the scene and teaches that that's not right for any of it. So this is not what the gospel, this is not why I came. This is not what the gospel is all about. It's not about holding it to yourself and telling everybody else, good luck, we have the answer, so we're good. It's not about controlling other people and saying, you have to do this, we're going to use our power and all this and what we know to tell you what to do. And rising to power and using it to control those around you. It's about recognizing that this is for everybody, because we have what they need. What you're looking for can only be found in me, and it doesn't matter who you are or where you're coming from. This is the answer. And because you know this, you need to share it, because people are dying without it. In fact, he came and gave his life as an example to say, listen, this is for everyone. This is the resource that you cannot keep to yourself. This is not a resource to control, it's a resource to give away. It's a resource of reconciliation, not dominance. In fact, Galatians tells us, in a verse I want to put up here for you, it says this, there is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male or female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. This is for everybody. That kind of covers everything, right? Jesus is saying, listen, when you know me, this is a resource for everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. This is not something you keep to yourself just for you and your people. Right? Church is not like a holy huddle where we come together and just wave it out. Right? That's not what this is about. This is about recognizing what we have in Jesus as a resource everybody needs. Everybody needs it. Matthew tells us, when Jesus is talking, he's saying, you guys, you're a light on a hill. You are supposed to shine this for the world to see. You don't have a light and then set it in the corner of the room. You have a light you put on the table in the middle so everyone can see. That is what he compares us to. If you know Jesus, if you have that relationship with him, say you are that kind of light that's supposed to be in the world. You're that kind of resource for people around you because there's people in darkness and they need you to show them the light. So they don't put it on a stand, they put it so everyone can see. See, back in those days, people lived in one-room houses, right? So when they didn't have all these other places like we do, so you put it in the middle of the room so everyone in that room in the house could see. Saying, we are those people. We are the light he's putting out there for people to say, we have this resource that people need, and they see it through us. You see, there's a story that I want to read that in Scripture that talks about this idea, and it's a story you guys have probably heard. It's a story that's been talked about a lot, if you've been to church at all before. It's preached on from a lot of different angles. But I want to look at it from one specific way. And it's a story of the woman at the well. It's found in John chapter 4. Again, this is a story that I'm going to summarize a little bit for you and then get to where we're going with it. But we have to realize, like in this movie with the Black Panther, like Wakanda, we're making a choice every day what to do with what we know. What to do with the relationship we have with Jesus. And so you're going to hear in this story that we're not the only ones that struggle with this. Right? So you have the story of Jesus meeting this woman at this well. Now it's unique because Jesus is leaving from one area, is going to another, he's traveling with his group of guys, his disciples, and they come across this area. And so what they were doing, they were going through Samaria, and they get to this place called Sychar, and there's a well there. Now wells back in those days were gathering places, because everyone had to have water, so that's where well they would come to get their water. You understand, we all, they couldn't just go to the tap and turn it on. They didn't have, Fiji water that we drink now. They had to go to the well. So this is a gathering place, but it was kind of the middle of the day. So they get there, and they've been walking a lot, they're tired, and the disciples are kind of angry, right? They're like, listen, we've been walking a lot, Jesus. We're hungry, it's hot. So they get to this place, they stop at the well, and the disciples say, we're going to go to town, we're going to go find the nearest Wawa, and we're going to get a shorty, and we'll be back. Okay, so they do that, the disciples go into town, they're going to get food. Now Jesus is hanging out at the well. Kind of stayed behind and said, okay, go get food so you guys aren't so hungry, right? You're not you when you're hungry, just a piece of food. So they do that, and when he's at the well, this woman comes. Now it's unique because it's the middle of the day. Most people either draw water at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. So if she's coming in the middle of the day, it's usually because she doesn't want to be around people, right? Feeling kind of like, I don't want to be seen, I don't want to connect with people who would normally be here from the city. I kind of want to do this secretly because it usually speaks to the person's reputation. So Jesus is there, this woman comes. Now she's a Samaritan woman. What you need to know is that Jewish people and Samaritans didn't get along. Jewish people saw Samaritans as not real, like it's kind of half humans in a sense, because back when the Israelites were going through and leaving and following where God was leading to, one of the many times that they would just kind of walk away from God, what God was telling them to do, because he had said, don't marry other nations, don't marry into other cultures, because he knew that if you did that, you would end up probably following their gods and not following him. So he kind of told his people, like, stay, don't do that. And one of the many times they didn't listen, which was a lot if you read the Bible, they didn't listen, and they married into this group of Samaritans from the country of Samaria and kind of created this half group that was half Jewish and half Samaritan. So those are the Samaritan women, so our people. So this woman was a Samaritan. And so Jesus wasn't really supposed to be talking to her, just because she was a Samaritan. The Jewish people didn't like Samaritans, and it was the other way around. They both kind of fought over who was right all the time. Maybe you have a family like that, right? Like, this is kind of like how it was. It was feud, like we're right, no, we're right. We worship God and we worship the real God. Like that was kind of the feud going on. So Jesus meets this woman. So number one, he's talking to her, and that's weird because he's a Jew and she's a woman. The second thing is he's talking to her, and it's weird because she's a woman. And back in that day, that wouldn't have happened. was like, you're a man, I'm a woman, like I don't, and it was a very different view of women back then, and it was like, you shouldn't even be talking to her. So he does what Jesus does, he breaks all the social norms, and he breaks out all the cultural barriers, and he starts a conversation. And he starts talking to her about her life. And he starts telling her things about her life that only he can know, that no one else knew. Like, she'd been married 4 times, and the person she's with now was not even her husband. So, boyfriend number 5, right? And he's telling her all these things, and he's talking to her about living water. And she's like, I'm just here to get a drink. He's like, no, I got water that you don't even know about that'll bring life, and all these things. And so she gets into the conversation, and towards the end of the conversation, says this, Jesus is talking to her, and she's saying, okay, we understand some things about God and not others, and we worship here and you worship there, and it's like this big thing. And the woman says, I know the Messiah, called Christ, is coming. And when he comes, he will explain everything to us. And then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, am he. I am he. This is the only other time outside of right before Jesus is crucified that he identifies himself as the Messiah, by the way. It's the only other time he says, this is who I am. And it's because this woman is looking and saying, I know a little bit about Jesus. She didn't have all the facts, right? She didn't really know all the truth about who he was, but she knew a little bit about him. She was looking for someone to tell her more. She was looking for someone to tell her the truth. And we live in a time and age where people are open to spiritual things, but they need people to explain them. They need people who are going to say, listen, I know the answer to what you're actually looking for. Let me help you understand this. And that's what's happening. And Jesus has compassion on her and says, what you're looking for is right here. It's me. Let me tell you about this. And she's like, whoa, she's blown away that he is who he says he is. You're the Messiah we've been talking about, but no one's ever explained to me what you're actually going to be like. And he's like, I'm telling you right now, you're looking at it. What you're looking for is right here in front of you. And after they had that conversation, right after that, what I think is really funny is the disciples come back. The disciples come back, and they don't really pay attention to what's going on. See, it says, just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman. Like I told you, they were like, that's not normal, right? It wouldn't be normal for a man to talk to a woman like that. But no one asked, what do you want? Or why are you talking with her? So even the disciples show up. They see Jesus talking to somebody. They're like, this is strange. But even the disciples, who've been with Jesus for a while now, didn't even think to ask who this woman was, to talk to the woman herself, to see what her actual needs were, to see what was going on there. They just said, and went off and ate their hoagies, right? Like, they didn't even think to ask the questions. Their mindset wasn't even like, hey, we've been with Jesus. Jesus is talking to her. We should probably follow what he's doing, see if we can help as well. They just kind of said, oh, all right, and went on their way. They didn't even think to ask who she was or how they could help. Right? They had gotten so used to this resource of Jesus that they didn't even think about how could they help this woman who's right there that Jesus is talking to, that it's just what he would do. No, Jesus has got this. We're hungry. We're going to go over here. And they left. See, the disciples, I think, model a lot of what we deal with in our culture now when it comes to sharing this resource that we have. And I think a lot of times when we talk about sharing who Jesus is, talking about the gospel, telling people what we believe, what we're learning, inviting them to church even, there's a lot of reasons we don't do it. Sometimes I think it's fear. But I think one of the biggest reasons is we just get distracted. We're distracted by stuff that doesn't matter. We're distracted by things that don't really make an eternal difference. And we have this idea, we have this resource, but we kind of fight this battle of it's time versus some time. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you have this idea, like Jesus is like, it's all about it's time. But we have this idea where we go, yeah, maybe sometime. Maybe sometime. It's like when you're trying to work out, your doctor says, hey, you could really use maybe a little more physical exercise. You know, it's time to start thinking about your diet. And you get home and you're like, yeah, maybe sometime I'll do that. Maybe sometime we'll get around to working on that, right? Or your accountant's like, you should probably work on, I think it's time to get control of your spending. Time to maybe stop using the credit card so much. Maybe time to start thinking about that. And you get home and you decide to go to the mall and you're like, yeah, maybe sometime I'll work on that. Maybe sometime I'll get around to it. Right? We have this idea that it's like, you do that with everything, right? Am I the only one who does that? We think about it, we go, no, I know it's time to do it now, but it's more on the sometime end of things. Like sometime I'll get around to it. Sometime I'll do that. And I think the problem is we do that with Jesus as well. I think we have, if you know him, if you're in a relationship with him, and again, if you're here today, you're just checking Jesus out, and this is not really for you. We're glad you're here. But I'm speaking to us today who say, yeah, I believe in Jesus, yeah, I'm following him, but we still kind of do the, sometime we'll get around to telling people about him. Sometime, eventually it'll happen, right? Like Jesus kind of gets put on our to-do list as one of the things that we do if we feel like we check off all the other boxes. You know, those Saturday night conversations of like, well, tomorrow's Sunday, what are our options? Like, could do church, we could do beach, fishing, we could do, like, you know, we kind of have him as a part of a list of things that we do. He's just on our to-do list instead of really letting him define our to-do list. That's really what it means to have that relationship with Jesus where he's in charge, where he's not just a part of what we do, he defines the priorities we have. And so just like the disciples who were with him, they were just distracted. They didn't see a need of a person, they didn't see a person right in front of them that they could try to help, to talk more about, to follow up with Jesus, to join in the conversation. They're like, oh, all right, Jesus got this, and they went off and ate. Like, there's so much more important than this woman in a lot of ways. They got distracted. It was like, it's time to eat right now. Sometime we'll get around to maybe helping other people out. See, this is not a guilt trip kind of thing. Please, don't hear me say that. You know, the fact is that I've heard growing up, and the statistic I don't think has changed a whole lot, is that the average follower of Jesus, the average church-going Christian, will never lead anybody into a relationship with Jesus in their entire life. Now, I was told that growing up. I looked into it. It really hasn't changed much from what I found online. And that's not a guilt thing. Because I know a lot of you do share your faith. I know a lot of you do talk to people about Jesus. I know some of you are sitting here today because of that. And that's amazing. It's just saying that the average person is more busy with what's distracting them than they are with really following Jesus the way he's asking us to. Well, the average believer is more interested in some time than it's time right now to be serious about this. And so as long as you have breath in your lungs, that can change. if you're like, that's me, that's okay. It's not a oh man, shame on you. It's you have the opportunity because you're still breathing. And you can still tell people. As long as you can breathe, you can tell people the truth about Jesus. As long as you can breathe, you have this resource, the opportunity to share. And so that's the thing, we have to battle it's time versus sometime. Because later on in the story, this woman, she has a conversation with Jesus, and she runs back to her town. She says, you have got to meet this guy who told me everything I've ever done. Which is a bit of an exaggeration, but it probably felt like it. Like, well, this guy was reading my mail, right? Like, he knew what was happening in my life. You've got to meet this dude. So she brings it up, and she tells it, and the entire town comes out to meet Jesus. See, she was kind of like the first missionary in a lot of ways. She had an encounter with Jesus. She knew that he could change not just her life, but everybody else's. And she had a sense of urgency to go and let everyone know that she could meet to come and do the same thing. And I think the hard part is a lot of us that have grown up in the church or maybe had a relationship with Jesus for a while, we lost that urgency. We lost that sense that it's time now. We've always kind of been lulled into that idea that we'll have it happen sometime. Sometime I'll have that conversation with my neighbor. Sometime I'll talk to my family member about it. Sometime that coworker I'll get around and telling them what I do or invite them to church with me. Sometime. We've lost the woman's urgency to say, I met Jesus. Let me tell you how you can too. You need to know about this resource. It will change your life. Let me come, meet him. Let me show you. Now. Not after my to-do list is done. Not later when I get around to it. But now. And she did. She brought all of them back to meet Jesus. And so many people were changed that day. And the disciples have this conversation about food again. Like, sometimes it blows my mind when they're with Jesus and they just don't get it half the time, right? So they're still thinking like, hey, Jesus didn't eat. We ate. He didn't eat. Who fed him? Right? That's their question. Somebody ordered a pizza we didn't know about. Like, who fed Jesus? Like, how is he not hungry right now? We're over here eating and he's doing ministry. And how is he not hungry? So they have this conversation with him. And Jesus does what Jesus does. He said, listen, you don't understand what you're talking about. My food, he says, do the will of him who sent me to finish his work. I have an urgency about the mission that I was sent here by my Father to do. And he says, you have this saying, It's still 4 months until harvest, which is basically back then, because it was a farming society, it was their basically way of saying, hey, we got plenty of time to get around to it. We still got 4 months until we have to harvest. We can do what we want. That'll come later, right? Like that's basically what we do now. We're like, hey, I'll get around to it. You want me to do, hey, I'll get to it eventually. That's kind of what that phrase was back then for them. I'll get around to it eventually. But Jesus says, listen, I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for harvest. Again, he's using a farming analogy to show them, look, take your eyes off your stomach for a second, fellas, and look at all these people who have come out here to meet me that need to know about this resource that you're standing right next to and you're concerned about your stomach. It's like, don't do this, put it off sometime. Do it, it's now. Right? That first phrase of, you have a couple months until harvest, that's a sometime kind of phrase. And we all have sometime kind of phrases in our life. Right? Like, I know I'm going to tell that person, I'm going to invite that person to church, I'm going to get to know their name, and then I'm going to start, I'll do that sometime. Jesus, I have a couple more weeks with that. I have a couple more months, I see him every day at work. You know, I have a couple months with my neighbor, I'll get to it, Jesus. We have those statements that we have. But Jesus says, you guys got to get this right. It's time. He said, look around you. The harvest, people are all around dying to know about what you have. He says the harvest is ripe. Look around you. The field, there's so many people who want to know. That's an it's time kind of statement. It's time. It's time, Jesus is saying. Listen, you've got this guy, you've got it twisted. You guys are worried about the wrong things. You're distracted by the wrong things. There's people all around you that need to know about what you have. And again, we have the same choice that we talked about that people made back in Jesus' day. We can keep it to ourselves. As long as we're good, and we know Jesus, we're okay. We can use it to kind of try to control people with. Or we can live the lifestyle that Jesus modeled for us and say, this is for everybody to have. You need to know this. One of my favorite verses is Romans 1:16. Maybe you guys, some of you know this, maybe not. But it's for I'm not ashamed of the gospel, because it's the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes. First to the Jew, then to the Gentile. I love this verse. Because it's a reminder of why it's so important to remember that it's time now. We don't need to be ashamed of the gospel. We have the power of God that is the resource for salvation to everyone who puts their faith in it. This is not a sometime kind of verse. This is an it's time kind of verse. Say, listen, we all know somebody. Right? We can think of somebody that we know that we probably put into the sometime category when it comes to Jesus, right? The sometime part of, well, eventually. And maybe if they ask me the right question and it's the perfect timing, then maybe I'll have the conversation with them. Maybe I've done that. Where it's like, well, okay, God, if you're really in charge and you want them to know about you, they'll come to me. They'll ask the question. Then I'll use the internet, and that'll be great. It's not on me, God. It's like, if you want it to happen. We all do that. Because that's sometime kind of attitude. Instead of saying, it's time. It's time to get back to that urgency of recognizing, like, there's people all around that are open to spiritual things. I don't know if you realize about this culture now. We're to live in a culture where people are all about spiritual things. They just have zero discernment as to what they're talking about. Like they're looking for it all over the place, right? Like horoscopes, and psychics are popping up on every corner because people are looking to tap into something they know is there. They just have no discernment over what they're doing to get it. We have an answer to that. We have a light to show them. Like we can point you to what you're actually looking for. What do we do with it? What do we do with it? That's the challenge. To say, okay, who do you know that's far from Christ? Who are you near that's far from Christ? That's the challenge today. As we end with communion and the worship team, these are the things I want to challenge you with. If you kind of do a self-diagnostic, right? A self-test. Kind of check out your own part of this whole thing. The first question is, it's very simple, but it's kind of the defining question you have to ask yourself. Does Romans 1:16 apply to you? In the sense that, are you unashamed of the gospel? Do you still believe that the power of the gospel is the answer to what the world needs? Now, I asked that question, you're like, duh, I'm in church. That doesn't necessarily mean that we actually believe that that's the answer that people need. And you have to start there. Do you really believe that Jesus actually is the answer? That the gospel has the answer to the needs of everybody in this world? Do you believe that? Because you can't settle that in your heart. None of the rest of it's going to matter. But if you fully believe that, then you can go on and ask yourself the next question. But if that's a no for you, and you go, you know what, God, I kind of want to, but I'm still new to this, and I'm still learning about you, that's okay. But then you got to go back and keep looking into it until you are fully convinced that what you have to offer is what people need. Because otherwise, it will always be a sometime issue for us. It will always be put in that category of later. When I get my job done, when I get that vacation paid for, when I get the house paid off, when the kids are at school, when all the what ifs we can come up with, it will always get put into that category until we are absolutely convinced that this is the hope of the world. Because Jesus is. But we have to believe that. And if you do believe that, the next question is, who do you know that needs to hear it? Odds are you could probably come up with one name or one face in your head right now that you know. I've been putting that conversation or that idea into the sometime category. Right? Right now, Jesus is saying, it's time. So lift your eyes up again. Take them off your stomach. Take them off the things all around you. And look at the people around you because they're crying out for what you have. Who is that one person that you can say, you know what? I'm going to have this. I'm going to start a conversation. You don't have to sit them down and give them the whole gospel presentation and a track and all. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, who's that person you can enter into a relationship with to say, I'm working towards helping you see the truth. And maybe you've had a conversation, and you do that a lot, but you're someone you need to follow up with. Right? It's someone you can say, okay, I did this 3 years ago, and they didn't respond, and I haven't talked to them since because I felt like, all right, I did it. Maybe I need to follow up with them. Who's that person? Those are the two questions you need to ask yourself. The first one always starts with, do I believe what I say I believe? Do I really believe that Jesus is who he says he is? Do I really believe that he is the answer to the world? Do I really believe he is the hope? The gospel provides that for everybody. And if I believe that, who am I sharing that with? Who's that person? And pray for that sense of urgency again that may have been snuffed out with life, with everything else going on, to where Jesus has been bumped down the to-do list to maybe even the very bottom. Maybe he's not even on your to-do list. Right? Maybe he hasn't even gotten that far. And he's saying, hey, let me help you rework your schedule going into the fall. Let's look at your to-do list and maybe remove some of the things that don't matter. And let me help you actually define, not just be a part of. Maybe that's the next step. You just actually sit down and go, okay, God, I forgive me. I totally bumped you out of my, even my desire to do this. I go to church and I feel good about myself, and then I go home and the rest of my week, you're not even part of it. Maybe Jesus today is saying, listen, I want to help you be that person that's going to be the agent of reconciliation in your environment. Who's going to bring this resource to those who need it wherever you are. Work, school, family, community. Doesn't matter where you're at. That you be that person who's that light in that room to share the resource we have. So who is that person? Who's that name? Who's that person? And you might even know their name. And maybe that coworker in the cubicle that you keep saying, man, I should probably get to know their name because I'm tired of saying, hey, you. Hey, what's up, buddy? Right? We all do that. Well, just get to know their name. That person, you need to get to know their name first, and then get to know them and invite them into the truth. I know it's not easy. Listen, we have to be around people who don't know Jesus for this to be the case. We really have to put ourselves in places to be it. And some of you guys have a lot more opportunity than others to do that. But there's people. There's people, like Jesus said. Don't put this in the sometime category. Because I got to tell you a little secret about how churches grow. It's still the number one way churches grow. It's still the number one people hear about Jesus. It's through us. It's not Facebook. It's not Instagram. It's not some crazy outreach big program in the community. It's through us. Through you inviting people to come and meet him. Through you being like this woman who runs and says, I just met Jesus. I don't know much about him yet. I just know he's real, and I know you need to know him too. Let's go do it together. That's look at those empty seats that are next to you. Think about who could be there. Think about who needs to be there. Think about who we talked about coming with you. Think about that person who needs to be sitting in that seat. And then pray for the opportunity and the courage to step up and say, all right, I want to step into a realization that it's time now This is not a sometime issue. We're not guaranteed sometime, guys, by the way. The Bible does not promise us sometime. Right? You're not guaranteed 4 years from now, you're not guaranteed 4 minutes from now. Right? But Jesus says, it's time. It's time to get back to remembering the urgency that we have to share the resources. People are dying without it. We need it. So as the worship team comes back up, we're going to remember that by celebrating communion together. We're going to remember that idea that Jesus paid the price. He died on the cross. He took our place to give us hope again, to give us access to new life, to pay what we can never pay on our own. This act of communion is a reminder and a celebration of the gospel that we just talked about. The power for anyone who believes in it to be saved. For anyone. Doesn't matter what your background, what you look like, where you come from, what you've done, does not matter. For anyone to be saved. And this act that we're going to take right here is a reminder of that. If you step into that relationship with Jesus, if you've given him your heart, if you accept that gift of grace in your life, and this is for you to say, thank you, Jesus. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for dying on the cross. Thank you for shedding your blood so that I can be someone who, one, is reconciled to you, and who can be someone who can go into my world and be an agent of reconciliation for those around me. Who can be a light in the dark places because of you. We cannot do this on our own. This is not a human strength effort kind of thing. This is the power of the Holy Spirit flowing through you, you being willing and open to letting him use you, whatever environment you're in, to say, it's time now, God. I don't have the answers. I'm not going to know. I'm not a theologian. That's okay. But it's time to get back to remembering that there's people out there who don't know. And I have the opportunity to share the resource that I've been given, that I've been raised, that they need. Through your power, through your Spirit working through me, we can see amazing things happen. We can help change the world. Because Jesus really is the hope of the world. It's the only thing we can hope in, guaranteed, is Jesus. So as you come, as they're playing, as you feel led, there's no pressure to take communion. If you're not at that place, that's fine. There's no judgment whatsoever. But if you are ready, you can come up to either side and take the bread, you can dip it, and remember Jesus and his sacrifice for us. And just as an aside, the bread is gluten-free because we don't want anyone not be able to take it. So just want to let you know that, because I know it's a question. But to come up as you feel led, remember Jesus and his act as we go through it together. So God, thank you so much for what you've done. And thank you for allowing us to be part of your plan to bring this world back in relationship with you. God, it's a crazy plan. I don't think I would have chosen you, but you did. You chose us. And you want to use us, God. I pray that you would help us to fight the battle of sometime versus its time and get back to its time. That urgency of, man, the world around you needs to know. And we have this resource that others are looking for, dying for, that can change the world. Then we share it freely. Forgive us when we've kept it to ourselves, out of comfort, out of just being easier. God, give us the courage to look around with fresh eyes, and lift our eyes to you once again and see that the field really is ripe for harvest. There really is people that are dying to hear about who you are. We thank you for the opportunity to partner with you in that mission. Thank you for the work on the cross that invites us into this reconciliation that can only come through your blood.